we talk about nationalizing the railroad, that's only one of the things, like you were saying, that needs to be under that kind of control. And then, of course, you have people coming out and saying, well, now you're sounding like a socialist or a communist or whatever. And it's like, yeah, that sounds better when we're talking about not screwing over 99% of the country.
Yeah, I mean, like, and I think you make an interesting point there because, I mean, Ryan and I are socialists, but Workers Strike Back is, a movement for anyone who wants to get involved in fighting for a different kind of society where billionaires don't control everything, and then we actually get to have the things that we need, and that it's going to take a fight to get there, and that people really have responded to that. And I think that, so yeah, whether you're a socialist, whether you might have voted for Trump in the last election, we've actually found a lot of common ground. I mean, we need to discuss these like differences within the movement, but this is a place for people who want to fight back, and who, I mean, we have these 5 demands that I think are really like where Workers Strike Back is really centered around. Workers need a real raise, good union jobs for all, fight racism, sexism, and all oppression, quality, affordable housing, and free healthcare for all, and no more sellouts. We need a new party. And I think the new party and like left leadership question is really key here, whether it's the labor movement or like Congress, is that we have had all these like attacks that are happening, and working people want to fight back against it, but we don't have the leadership to lead those struggles. The loss of abortion, and all the attacks that we're seeing on trans people right now, like there's this common through line, and the attacks on the rail workers, the common through line is needing a leadership that's accountable to movements of working people to actually take that struggle forward and to not compromise with the ruling class, with like the political establishment and sell out working people, but to actually have a class struggle approach and win real victories.
Yeah. Well, that's what this is. We're in a class war. It's a class war, and people don't recognize that. I've officially declared that I'm not any ist. I can't be categorized. I'm not an ist of any kind, I with anything, but I am definitely in this class war on your team. And so that's what people need to be focused on, which is why parties use things like culture issues to keep us distracted from the bigger economic issues. And people like the trans community are collateral damage. And that's just, and why would they not be? We have to punch down somewhere. Because that's just how this works. Yeah.
I think it's very important regarding what you guys are doing. And Bia, you just brought up a really great point. Being around the labor movement, you have people that are as far left as socialist communist, and you have people that are as far right as, MAGA conservative. It is amazing how labor is the great equalizer. You bring the main issue to the table, like collective bargaining. I mean, obviously people on the right generally are, you find a lot of people that are very anti-union, but I never find people that are anti-labor. That I don't find. And so the fact that a living wage, universal health care, a clean energy grid, criminal justice reform, real tangible differences that will make our lives better in this country across the entire political spectrum. In any labor organization that I've come across, there is great solidarity to be had, and it has been for some time. Do you guys see it the same way, that our way out of this is going to be solidarity across the political spectrum?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this sensibility of moral agreement, it has limitations. But when we're talking about improving the quality of our lives materially, when we're talking about $25 minimum wage, that it's not red or blue. It's when you're talking about having jobs that could, make America great again was based on a false notion of like racist history, right? But the reality is unionized jobs were some of the reasons why people were able to take care of their entire family. And so if we're changing the narrative and we're saying like, let's struggle together, let's have our collective action against the boss, and drawing out the role of the boss as being very different from the ideas of the people across your aisle, even if you don't necessarily identify as the same race, gender, political orientation, whatever. Like that's how you always bring, and like struggle changes people too, you know, and like that third demand has already created a conversation that fight racism, sexism, and all oppression, right?
Yeah.
We want to say the person that wins when we're divided is not you or me, it's the bosses. You know, if we're divided and we're pointing at each other the entire time, the bosses are winning because now you're taking that off the heat off of them. And we need to put that heat squarely where it belongs. Yes, you might get paid more if you're a white guy, but who's paying him more? You know, did he come in and demand that and got his wage? If he did, why did he ask for 1/300th of what the boss is making?
Right.
Probably not. He probably didn't make that demand, right? Yeah. So like coming together and like drawing out those just like they did 100 years ago in labor struggles to say you can't have white versus black worker unions. You can't have that because you're drawing a dynamic where you're already creating scabs. We're saying we have to fight together and fight against the common enemy, which is the boss and the parties that are apologists for them.
Yeah. Well, they're just owned. They're just owned.
Yeah.
The people that are the party people are just little tools for corporate. You know, that's all. They're just sitting there being little puppets, and they're the ones that are owned by corporate donors. But this is very reminiscent to me of like the Poor People's Campaign that MLK was working to put together. And I think that this is really important. And I think it's a sign that we're like on the verge of something happening. And what's even more inspired is that somebody like Shama is behind this because she actually has a track record of being successful in her ventures. She's not just like a talking head. And I think that that's critical, is having someone who actually can get things done. What was the launch like for you guys? I know it was a bunch of locations. There wasn't one near us. Florida is definitely, don't worry about us. We're going to be underwater anyway. But so how was the launch for this? Yeah.
I mean, well, we would love to get to Florida. So that's I'd be happy
to help you. And I'd be happy. Like I could not fangirl enough over her. Like if she called me, I'd be like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it for free. We can set the whole thing up. But we are a right to work state that has closed primaries. And so the idea of being outside of party is just, it's not happening here until we change our voting.
Not happening in Florida.
Well, and I think that Florida is a really interesting and important example too. When you think, I think the stats I saw were recently about Florida, but the situation of how you've got a lot of Republican voters, or like, the state's more conservative, is the narrative. But then when you actually ask people concretely about issues like the $15 minimum wage, which voters supported in Florida, Medicare for all, for these really progressive demands, if those are the things people support, those, like people actually support, free abortion, people support, all of these rights that you wouldn't associate with Florida or, with, more conservative parts of the US. But what that really demonstrates is the enormous potential for like organizing outside of the two parties. Like you're saying, people don't see a future for themselves in either of these parties. They sort of hold their noses to vote for whoever they can because there's no alternative. But really what people want are the things that we're fighting for. And that's why, to get concrete about it, I think it's a good way to talk about like how Worker Strike Back is going. Well, I'll talk about the launches, but like concretely the stuff we've been involved in, which we really highlighted at these launches. I'm in Seattle, Ryan's in Chicago. So we had 2 different launches. In Seattle, we had like 300 people and we raised $41,000, which was incredible. It was really, we had a worker there. One of the big campaigns that we're taking on to try to organize around is unionizing Amazon workers at a facility called KCVG in northern Kentucky, Cincinnati. And, unionizing Amazon is something every working class person has a stake in. It's the largest employer in the world. What happens there impacts all of us. And people have responded. I mean, for the worker who spoke, there was a standing ovation and people had tears in their eyes, hearing him talk about the risks that Amazon workers have to face during tornadoes and during, these like horrific working conditions that they face every day, having to choose between their lives and keeping their jobs. And then what it's taking to fight back amidst, intense union busting. Amazon's firing, some like one of the lead organizers and a bunch of other workers. And so they've organized a job campaign, and they are, militantly fighting back and organizing and asking for support across the labor movement. And Workers Strike Back has donated $3,000 so far. We're having a unionized Amazon week of action coming up on the 18th through the 25th to talk to working people. But when we talk to people on the street, they're like, hell yeah, I want to support. Like, I don't support what Amazon is doing or Jeff Bezos. Like, we need to fight back against this. And so, it's been really incredible. And so we had, a speaker talking about that. And then we had a whole range of other speakers, local unions, unionized grocery workers and graduate students. And then we also had a speaker to talk about another really historic victory recently that you probably heard about, but we won legislation to make Seattle the first city out in the world outside of South Asia to ban caste-based discrimination, which was a bill that Shama sponsored, and that we led this fight for alongside members of the South Asian community in Seattle. And this historic victory. And so we had someone speaking about that. And so this whole range of things that Workers Strike Back is taking on and fighting for, I think, is really exciting. These are the kind of fights we're trying to amplify.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.